Hey there, I'm Mark, in affiliation with Spectrum Pulse, and yep, Playboi Carti album bomb, oh joy, and this, it's Billboard BREAKDOWN. I don't remember. If you can't tell, I'm not exactly thrilled about this. When I saw how many songs were on the album, I just got this sinking feeling in my gut because I knew that so many would wind up charting regardless of, I don't know, the quality of the music or the allegations against Playboi Carti. Read just how often he's dicked over his own fan base the past 5 years. Of course, that sporadic behavior is a big reason why Playboi Carti has cultivated some mystique in absence of quality control or content, or even as he calls the project music but can't bother to change the album art from the original title I Am Music, and inevitably I think of Barry Manilow saying the exact same thing on I Write the Songs in the mid-70s. See how tenuous this sort of mystique can be? I'm just nowhere near as impressed. But who knows, maybe this week and going through so many songs that might change my mind. Well, okay, before we get into all that, our top 10, where I'll admit I'm a little bit surprised that Luther by Kendrick Lamar and SZA still managed to hold on to the number 1, even as it lost the top spot on streaming. But hey, when you got sales gains and are nearing the peak on the radio near the top, that's a margin that's managed to hold over our brand new number 2, J0rdan by Playboi Carti, which dominated on streaming but really has nothing else. While I expect this album bomb to probably have legs for a week or two given pretty weak competition coming, I'm not seeing that inevitable stable crossover when the radio's not really touching him. But this did get over Die With a Smile by Lady Gaga and Bruno Mars at number 3. Right now it's on top on the radio, and while it got pushed around a bit on streaming, it had a surprisingly good sales week, so it might not be out of gas just yet. And that put it over our second new Playboi Carti song, Rather Lie, with The Weeknd at number 4. Again, purely on streaming, although with The Weeknd's presence it might get pushed for crossover. But then we had a pretty significant new arrival that's not from Carti, The Giver by Chappell Roan at number 5. Now I also expect it's going to fall back a little bit next week as well. It's got strong sales and streaming, but radio's a little slow to get on board. But if there is a sign that Chappell Roan's career might have legs going to that next sophomore album, it is probably here. Hell, it knocked back a bar song Tipsy by Shaboozey to number 6. It's still dominant, but fading on the radio, fading in all categories really, but it put it above Birds of a Feather by Billie Eilish, which actually picked up some position to number 7, although I chalk more of that up to positional moves rather than any sort of strength or momentum. It is losing in all channels right now. And I know that because Not Like Us by Kendrick Lamar slid down to number 8 off some pretty considerable streaming losses and losing on the radio, although the cynical part of me wonders if the multiple collaborations with Playboi Carti saw some revisitation of the whole us and who that becomes. More on that in a bit. We also had losses for Pink Pony Club by Chappell Roan down to number 9, where she did see radio growth, but if you lose enough on the streaming margins, you're probably gonna fall back, even if the sales are great. And finally, we got another new top 10 entry, and probably the one I expect to stick around the most, Anxiety by Doechii. The sales are huge, streaming held through the album bomb, and the radio push has finally started. I just really wish I liked the song more, but I can't say I'm all that surprised that it's doing well in such times as these. That naturally takes us to our losers and dropouts, and where you'd think I might have some actual positive words for Playboi Carti. He is sweeping away the older songs, putting them in recurrency, helping keep the chart fresh. But here's the thing. Billboard has been so slapdash enforcing their own recurrency rules, I don't have any faith at all that if a song was knocked off and could have possibly rebounded to the top 50 when Playboi Carti goes away, that Billboard's not arbitrarily going to let some come back. And I know it's not going to be consistent either. So I might not complain that Who by Jimin is gone, alongside Liar by Jelly Roll, and High Road by Coetzel and Jesse Murph, and Please 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 by Sabrina Carpenter, and What You Know About Me by Glorilla featuring Sexy Red. I mean, they're all making the year-end list for 2025 anyway, along with the exit for Sticky by Tyler the Creator featuring Glorilla, Sexy Red, and Lil Wayne. But again, let's see what actually happens next week. I wish I could trust Billboard to be remotely consistent, but I have been doing this thing for way too goddamn long to have any kind of faith. Anyway, further down the chart, we also saw the songs exiting that probably won't hit any year-end for this year, like the revival of All the Stars by Kendrick Lamar and SZA, Disease Please by Lady Gaga, Fat, Juicy, and Wet by Sexy Red and Bruno Mars, 4x4 by You by Lainey Wilson, Voy a Levarte pa Puerto Rico by Bad Bunny, and Tu Boda by Oscar Maiden and Fuerza Regida. Although that last one might make the year end near the very bottom, it's gonna be close. Now that would take us to our losers, but it's one of those album bomb weeks where that list is over 40 songs. And while I could focus on stuff on top that's been holding steady, I'm gonna try a slightly different tactic. Any continued downward move or shift from a pronounced gain last week, or if a song might be truly getting beaten down and losing 20 songs or more, I'll focus on those. Let's start with the first category, the continued losers. Sorry I'm Here for Someone Else by Benson Boone, just not taking off at 70. Give Me a Hug by Drake, collapsing down to 78. Might as well mention Somebody Loves Me with Party Next Door at 83, and Die Trying with Party and Yebba at 76. I Ain't Sayin' by Jordan Davis, continuing down to 97, and Miss Whitman by Bad Baby, mercifully falling to 100. Then we had the expected gains that fell back. Abracadabra by Lady Gaga lost that album bomb traction down to 37. Worst Way by Radley Green apparently lost all his Nashville radio push to 66, and Tattoo by Tito Double P slid to 91. Now let's really consider the songs that were really forced back, and that list actually makes a bit more sense in terms of established traction that's just no longer being there, or the expected decline. Revolving Door by Tate McRae at 59, BMF by SZA at 61, Indigo by Sam Barber and Avery Anna at 63, No One Noticed by the Marias at 64, Wildflower by Billie Eilish at 67, Ballet Inolvidable by Bad Bunny at 68. Significant chunk of these cuts had some mid-range traction, but they're just probably losing steam near the end of their run. It happens. But then sadly you get Good News by Shabuzi falling to 72, or ironically Smile by Morgan Wallen falling away at 74, even if I expect that to rebound when his album comes, or Peekaboo by Kendrick Lamar featuring AZ Chike at 79, Tweaker by LeAngelo Ball at 82, Loco by Denton Vega at 84, Busy Woman by Sabrina Carpenter at 87, and Am I Okay by Megan Maroney at 99. Now this would take us to our gains, except there weren't any. No returns either. Thus, we're just in album bomb territory, and big album bomb territory at that. This is a week that's built for those larger rules, given that Carti charted 30 new songs, and I can't imagine any of them are gonna last. We're focusing on best, the worst, and the top 20. Outside those, brace yourself, we got a lot to run through here. Walk at 96, South Atlanta Baby at 88, Overly at 86, This One Got It at 85, and OPM Baby at 75. That one's dangerously close to my bottom slots. What a chalky overmixed mess where Carti sounds like he's borderline giving up by the last verse. Then we have We Need All the Vibes with Young Thug and Ty Dolla $ign at 71. That song should have dropped 4 years ago. Olympian at 65. Twin Trim with really just Lil Uzi Vert at 58. Carti's not in the song at all. Like Weezy at 56. Crank at 55. I See You Baby Boy at 54. Jumpin with Lil Uzi Vert at 53. And Wake Up Filthy with Travis Scott at 52. Finally, HBA at 48. Trim with Future at 46. Pop Out at 41. K-Pop at 38. Toxic with Skepta at 34. Philly with Travis Scott at 28. Mojo Jojo at 27. And Backdoor featuring Kendrick Lamar and Jhené Aiko at 25. I wish I could say I was more disappointed, but again, we'll get more into that later. Now, would you look at that? This week suddenly got a little bit easier to work with, although we still got a lot of Carti, so let's start with number 80, Cocaine Nose by Playboi Carti.
Put a bitch in a phone chase. Gucci snakes, with slime on the plane. Stay with a hood right here.
So this is probably my favorite song on the Playboi Carti album, mostly because it's where the production gets closest to the grimy malevolence that's the baseline of his mystique, with the crushing bass and contorted guitar, even as the weedy percussion flickers around him. I actually think it goes pretty hard in order to capture some of that cocaine vibe. Shame Playboi Carti himself doesn't come close to matching it in content or energy, as his raspy flow tries to get a little bit darker, but it's more ad-libs and attitude than actual bite. And no, Carti, you're not close to Jay-Z or Dame Dash with Opium. That's outright laughable. It's kind of a shame. If you got a rapper like Denzel Curry or JPEG Mafia who knows what to do with production that goes this hard and dark, you might get an actual banger. As it is, I don't know, pretty good. That's not saying much. Number 69, Munyun by Playboi Carti.
When she get bored, buy it in cash, put it on the floor. Came a long way, still can't believe I made Forbes.
Look, I don't even think the Carti fans like this. I was fine with Swamp Izzo shouting and cackling over the production, kind of creating a mixtape feel, even if it didn't excuse the bricked out bass and the synth sounding like ass. But Carti sounds like he's dying here, and he can't match any of that energy. So when the beat switch occurs on the outro, there was no momentum to effectively pay it off or sell it. But then there's the rapping itself. Why is Playboi Carti censoring himself on the explicit version of the track when the rampant crass hedonism and the edgy shit is his baseline appeal amidst stacking cash and not believing that he wound up featured in Forbes? Dude, I wound up getting written about in Forbes 4 years ago. It's not as special as it used to be. But look, the problem here is that it just blows apart any sense of immersion, and he also gives me a splitting headache every time I listen to it. And yeah, worst on the album. Skip it. Number 57, Emergence by Sleep Token.
Come on, out from underneath who you were.
Feels a little odd that amidst all the Playboi Carti, we get arguably the biggest debut associated with heavy metal in years on the Hot 100. And while I could make all manner of cheap shots that highlight bad mixing and edgelord nonsense doesn't actually make you heavy, that might be giving more credit to Sleep Token, and that's an uphill struggle for me. If you see my reviews, you know I'm really not a fan of this group, and they try to infuse modern metal with some really dated and awkward pop R&B flourishes, along with the lead singer who sounds like Dan Smith of Bastille. I get why they're popular. Having a more tuneful and accessible side to mainstream rock or metal can lead to a lot of crossover and a wider audience, especially with women. I don't know, I just wish they were better at it. Case in point with this. Which takes Sleep Token's formula of solemn, piano-backed elegance and clean singing, where the chunky riffs eventually drop in after some gentle acoustic guitars, along with some really nice saxophone that ends off the song. That was a good surprise. But not before we get one of the sloppiest attempts at a drill flow on the second verse, where not only does the beat sound so sterile and choppy against the ugly goop of the synth, the frontman can't remotely get on beat. It just sounds embarrassing, not helped by all the pitch-down vocals that surround it. The third verse actually replicates most of his flow with some actual down-tuned riffs, and surprisingly enough, it works better, but it's not a brand of metal that clicks for me. It's just ugly, really overworked. As for the lyrics, well, trying to avoid the increasingly overwrought lore that the average listener will not know nor care about Sleep Token fans, this is broadly framed around the mistrust in cycles of abuse. But it's more content to wallow in that morass and constant returns to the abuser and a lot of overwritten space-themed jargon on the verses. And that ultimately circles to my big problem with the song. It feels so overworked and fidgety to the point of losing its underlying passion, and it just doesn't connect with me as a result. I know I might be in the minority with this, but in a stronger week, the issues with this song would stand out a lot more, because I don't think it's very good. All I'm saying. Number 45, Dark Thoughts by Lil Tecca.
Bitch, you never had, yeah. I'm a Tommy boy, don't lie, so I ain't gon' slide if that shit ain't by the bag, yeah. My life changed so fast that I don't even recognize myself from last year. Said she never needed no man, but when she with you, said she needs somebody else.
It's funny that a couple of years ago, I was generally kinder to Lil Tecca than most. I liked Ransom, and his brand of pop trap was lightweight and generally inoffensive. He's had a knack for refining hooks that actually stick in your head, so I wasn't surprised he charted yet another song. And yeah, you know what, some of that is still here, although I wouldn't really call this trap. The plastic guitar rollick around the shuffling scratches and the squealing twinkle of the synth, it sounds a little like a West and East Coast fusion, with Lil Tecca's endlessly catchy melodic flow on top, and even if the groove is a little bit stiffer than I would prefer, I still think it's pretty sticky for just running over 2 minutes. Now, of course, the content's not worth much. Lil Tecca's locked in, where he seems almost bemused this girl's looking to bounce in his general direction when she says she doesn't need a man, nor her current partner, who Lil Tecca is lightly mocking for all of that. And while she might have some dark, angsty thoughts, he can provide some relief because he can currently handle all of that, and even his own angsty thoughts. Look, I'll be honest, it feels really flimsy. It's more about the hook being just catchy enough to go viral, probably take off on TikTok. But Lil Tecca is among the better ones in the lane. I'll call it decent, just not really better than that. Number 33, Fine Shit by Playboi Carti.
Bitch so bad she can't even post online. Don't say you ride for me, little bitch, you ride. Don't say you die for me, little bitch, just die.
It's rare for me to care enough to dig into Playboi Carti for his content. You can't tell me in good conscience he's saying anything of substance on music. It's very obviously not the point. It's hype, vibes, all the rest of the bad excuses. But I'm making an exception here, and not because of any of the accusations around AI being used, which I have not seen enough proof, but we will get to more of later. Yeah, of course the production's bad. The shuffling trap skitter that clips the mix alongside his overcompressed baby voice and the warbling vocal loop, they actively grated on my nerves, but it's Playboi Carti's "this girl's so hot she can't leave my house" sentiment that starts feeling really creepy when you know about how Playboi Carti treats women. Especially on the hook, you get the line, "Don't say you'll die for me, little bitch, just die." Granted, I'm not sure how coherent he's expected to be given all the drugs he's obviously on, to the point where he'd cancel a show to watch a film, aka masturbate, or that he's so high he might go live. Look folks, if you're streaming, never do this, it's gonna backfire on you. But what pissed me off was a very deliberate reference to Mike Posner's "I Took a Pill in Ibiza," a song deliberately about the pratfalls of failing as an artist when you're doing drugs, where Carti makes reference amidst his own flexing with no clue just how precarious his own fame might as well be. I call it self-aware commentary if I thought Carti was remotely capable of that, but it doesn't make this song any less garbage. Skip it. Number 20, Crush by Playboi Carti and Travis Scott.
Crush, let me crush. Shawty gon' let me crush. Let me crush your shit. Shawty gon' let me crush. Let me crush.
Alright, we're now in the territory of somewhat passable Carti songs that charted a little higher. Let's deal with the big Travis collab first that grabs a chiptune synth from a dying Casio with an operatic gospel choir behind the hook that almost swings around to kind of working with the gothic trap bombast, the revving electric guitar, and the deeper percussion. Honestly, it feels more equipped for Travis Scott to just go off in his lower register on his own, but he barely delivers before Carti hops in with his baby voice and rattles through brand name porn, including the big affiliation with Nike. Interesting how that anti-Adidas line of attack has kind of stuck around, dating all the way back to Drake and Travis Scott sang it on Sicko Mode 7 years ago. And then Playboi Carti talks about hitting a woman like a deer. Not only is the wordplay bad, it might not be in Carti's best interest given the allegations to make that wordplay. Somehow that didn't get censored, really tells me of his priorities. But look, this is getting carried on production more than anything. Give it to a competent rapper, hey, maybe even like Meek Mill, might be good. Or something. Number 17, Good Credit by Playboi Carti and Kendrick Lamar.
Diamonds, they water. I'm saying I don't wait for no pussy. The pussy on me, I'm a cutter. She trying to be part of my schedule. I told her, "Ho, come back tomorrow."
So I'll say it as a Kendrick fan. It says something that he chooses to work with rappers like Playboi Carti given his plays around integrity, especially with women. I mean, it's not surprising given his co-sign of XXXTentacion and his heavy featuring of Kodak Black on Mr. Morale, how often he's worked with Dr. Dre, but it's the reason I've long thought Not Like Us will age rather awkwardly, because of who he includes in the us category. Because by extension, if you're comfortable with those allegations swirling around your colleagues, it signals to people who might then have to exclude themselves for their own safety. And I've heard the whole thing, Kendrick's not your savior, he's been calling himself a hypocrite for a decade now, he's trying to say more by offering rappers redemption, showcasing his nastier impulses in contrast. On this song he calls Carti his evil twin. Why do you care so much? Stop morality policing, asking questions, and no, I'm not playing. If you want to say that Kendrick can't be questioned for inconsistent choices, like giving Playboi Carti 3 features when he's independent and does not have to, that's giving Kendrick power and putting him on a pedestal that he himself has disavowed, although how consistent that disavowal is, I could debate, especially given some of the conservative subtext slipping into his bars the past couple months, from GNX down to this album and the song with Jhené Aiko. I don't know, just very interesting to whom the passes are granted. And all that's way more interesting than the song itself, which does not impress me at all. The grinding synth clips the mix around the fizzy percussion, there's a slight melodic switch that doesn't really do anything, Carti rambles through a messy, drug-addled Future impression that reminds me just how much I'd rather listen to Future himself, who can actually flow better and say a little more or just sound coherent, and Kendrick Lamar is trying to ramp up his menace alongside the luxury porn and the flexing. And sure, Kendrick is fine at that. Kendrick has energy and enunciation to sound creepy and uncanny in his sleep. He can sell all of this playing in Playboi Carti's world. But I gotta wonder if he'll wind up regretting that in the end, especially when the song is not much of anything. Number 5, The Giver by Chappell Roan. Watching the discourse around this song has been interesting to me, because not only was it surrounding where Chappell Roan could be taking her career next, and if she could keep up the momentum, but it also had to do with the sound. This was pop country of all things. Now, not precisely surprising. Chappell Roan grew up listening to a lot of Nashville radio, and from what she's described, her taste is not exactly great, but she's not received the blowback in some country circles. Nashville radio is of course not behind this yet, but some folks critiquing have revealed some biases in interesting ways. I'll leave it there for now. But as someone who actually likes Chappell Roan and likes pop country, even if I had some skepticism around Dan Nigro producing, I hoped it'd be good. And yeah, it is. Although if we're going by the standards of Chappell Roan's best, I'm not gonna put it in that tier. A big point in his favor is actually that production. The ruckus squealing fiddle, the live drums, the choppier strumming. Even if I think Chappell Roan's vocals are multi-tracked when they probably don't need to be on the hook, you can very clearly tell she's aiming for that big barroom sing-along, and yeah, it's gonna work, especially with the male vocal punch-ins on the bridge that I thought were kind of cute. And yeah, the lyrics and content are fine too. A playful lesbian hookup where she can give tangible pleasure where most modern Nashville cowboys can't, and she nails that wink at the audience and the explicit references that are right below the surface. That's very country. So yeah, loose, funny, very likable, a little less obviously theatrical, but proof she can excel in this lane without it. That was a concern of mine, and again, not in the tier of her best, but a really good little song regardless. If it's gonna become a hit, I'm okay. Hope it sticks around. Number 4, Rather Lie by Playboi Carti and The Weeknd.
Rather lie than confuse you, girl. Truth is we left them, they want us gone. Truth is they can't handle me at the top.
And speaking of folks who shouldn't work with Carti anymore, The Weeknd. But not for any moral reason. The Weeknd's just never even tried putting himself on a pedestal in his art, or because I don't think their chemistry remotely brings out the best in either, even if they're on tour with each other. But where Timeless is still crap, this is also mired in some similar controversy, because I've seen allegations that the verses are not from Playboi Carti at all on this song, instead from one Keith Lawson, a ghostwriter who used an AI filter and then was mixed well enough on the song with the 6 producers to pass as Playboi Carti. Now, to be clear, Carti has denied this in the same way he denied it with Timeless. The source of the allegations, they're a bit dubious in my opinion, and Playboi Carti's credits on the songs on streaming platforms are largely obscured, so hard to verify. But the folks advancing these claims the most, they're not haters. They're diehard Playboi Carti fans on his fan Reddit and social media circles, some of which might be cope because they might not like the songs, some of which might be true, especially in the dubious territory of ghostwriters, reference tracks, and AI voice duplication. It sure as hell is not helping any cultivation of mystique on this utterly bloated album. You could have cut these songs, especially when they're otherwise so goddamn mediocre. The choppy gauze of the synth around the stock trap percussion, The Weeknd's utterly obnoxious "I'd rather lie than lose you" a sentiment, and then Playboi Carti's verse that's way tighter and more melodically focused than at any point on the album. The competency is actually standing out. Well, okay, for a certain definition of competence, it still feels like a low-rent Young Thug impression, and it's still flagrantly empty, where the most notable lines are where he offers to give this girl his kidney as an expression of true love. Given the drug abuse, I would not trust the health of that kidney. And I'm digging deep like a plunger. Naturally, I think about toilets and in this sort of metaphor for our bargain barrel bad love song. Look, folks, nobody needs this, AI or not. Move on. And finally, number 2, Evil Jordan by Playboi Carti.
I'm telling you, nobody's safe. I've been living my life limbo. My ice, it came with a tray. I'm so high, got half my face. This not a rockstar phase.
And this is the track that's gonna end off our weekly Playboi Carti experience, most of which y'all did not have, but I had to listen to this whole album multiple times to pick out best and worst. And wow, what an inconsistent, bloated, vacuous project. I wasn't sure why this was the track that charted the highest at first, but at least with the grand strings and the cleaner touches of guitar, it sets up some of that cinematic vibe, it starts making sense. But when all we get is one verse when the blocky, wheedling knock comes in, which sounds sounds like a phone that Playboi Carti's ignoring as he phones in another verse with a weak Lil Yachty impression. Look, I didn't mind Swamp Izzo shouting over the majority of this album, but he does kind of sound distracting here when the beat and Carti himself are otherwise so thin and limp as Carti rattles through generic luxury porn and drug abuse that he wants to take his girl shopping. And again, I have to ask the question, what mystique is even here? I can get a lot of this from nearly any other rapper in trap, often with better melodies and production, even sometimes content. And it has me convinced that if it wasn't for Playboi Carti taking nearly 5 years to put this out, how flimsy his mystique actually is would have been exposed way earlier. In other words, paradoxically, the album bomb might be the best and worst thing that happened to Playboi Carti, because overexposure could do way more damage than a lot of folks will realize. But this song's just whatever, let's move on. And yeah, that's the week. Easy best is going to The Giver by Chappell Roan. I don't even think it's a contest. Although Cocaine Knows by Playboi Carti is going to get our honorable mention. Credit where it's due. Worst of the week, I could have honestly given a 5-way tie with just Playboi Carti songs, but I'm giving it to Munyun with dishonorable mention going to Fine Shit. Good grief. Next week, I guess we'll see the fallout from this mess, or if Selena Gomez and Benny Blanco can muster an album breakthrough. Stay tuned for that. But until then, I'm Mark. You're watching Billboard Breakdown, affiliated with Spectrum Pulse. And I'll see you